6:32 p.m. and It is now 6:32 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting of the Community Development Committee to order. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionks.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you're a part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand but stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Also, please be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionks.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Folks, please call the roll.
Haden, Chomphosy.
Here.
Milhaus.
Here.
Loudon. Here. Ryherd.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Chomphosy.
Here.
Carpenter Davis. Here.
All right, our first item of business tonight is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now on an item that is not on our agenda tonight? All right, can you come to the lectern and state your name and city of residence?
Sorry,
that's okay. Take your time.
Kim Donaway, Mission, Kansas. Is that it? Okay. First thing was I was at the Sustainability Commission meeting last night. It was great. I would like to see more details though. Anything that's being recommended to the council, these meeting minutes are extremely vague. Nobody knows what's going on. So, but I really did enjoy it. Two, since we have all these solicitors going to knocking on doors and ringing doorbells, and even though we have these, they're still doing it. And when they're waking up my grandson, this is what Fairway has. It actually has consequences, the number of the police department for us, but it's more visible about the solicitors, because the solicitors will stand on your porch and your sidewalk and argue with you. We've had to call the police several different times on different companies that don't have permits to solicit. Then 3 will be the block TIF project that they want on the luxury apartments, the multifamily that they want to rob again in the city. That is a massive real estate company that's worth a fortune. And those are luxury apartments going in.
That piece is part of the agenda.
No.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's why I'm speaking about it, because I called the city clerk today to find out what I could speak about.
Okay.
Because I don't want to disrupt the rules. So I'll follow the rules. But I'm totally against giving them any money, because then when I'm looking at, you know, how our money comes in and that pie, the representative for our area for the state of Kansas made the assumption that all these multifamilies going in, that they're going to be contributing to the property tax base, which they're not, some of them for 30 years, the third one for 10. I don't know what block is wanting there for that money grab. And I said, excuse me, no, it's not being dispersed out. We are bearing the brunt. We current residents are subsidizing the new people moving in. So we should never, the city should not be a profit center at the, for people. The citizens should never make revenue streams just to be generating. That is not in the best interest of the citizens. So thank you.
Just a couple of follow-up questions. Ms. Donaway, would you be willing to share that solicitor's sticker from Fairway?
Oh, yes, I didn't know who to give it to.
If you can give it to me, we'll take a look at that. Thank you. I know that you did address the Sustainability Commission meeting minutes, and I know that the meeting minutes that you were seeing for the meeting that you attended, the previous meeting, there was not a quorum present, and so they didn't take any specific action. So I think you and Mr. Carroll had a conversation about that. And then I will make sure the block project will be calendared for the city council in the coming months later this fall. We'll make sure that you are aware of when that's coming forward. And if you want to come back and have the opportunity to speak specifically then.
Yes, because it was all the neighbors in the neighborhood that told me about the new project with Block. So that's why I got online and went to look. And, you know, they printed off a packet for me. So thank you for that. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other public comments in the audience or anything online? Okay, great. We will now move into items from the Planning Commission. We have one item coming forward from the Planning Commission this evening for consideration of a final plat for the Mission Beverly project from Brian Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is regarding a final plat for the Mission Beverly, which we commonly know as the Milhaus project, which is roughly between Dearborn and Beverly on both sides of Martway. So we have considered the preliminary development plan as well as the final development plan, and the final step is the final plat. And so the final plat really is kind of what it is. It identifies the two lots. Then it sets aside various easements for both utilities as well as city stormwater infrastructure, and then does make a couple of right-of-way dedications. So in lot number 1, which is that lot on the north side of Martway, we'll be dedicating about an additional 10 feet along the southern border as additional right-of-way from Martway, and that'll be for the on-street parking as well as the realignment of the Rock Creek Trail. And then we will be having a pedestrian access easement on the very western edge of lot 2. So that's essentially a future pathway from the community center, Martway, to Anderson Park. So they have that dedication on their property now. So if the time ever comes, we want to do that, it's there for us to utilize. So that's it in a nutshell. This will be on your agenda for the 17th, I believe, when we meet. 21st. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, should we want to do, see if there's any comments from the public or the committee first, I guess. Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Ben, did you have, yeah.
Yeah, Brian, I'm just looking at the one little thing in the middle of the proposed lot 1 that there's the 10-foot sewer easement partially released. Is that to do with improving the conditions of the infrastructure underneath the lot?
So there's an existing stormwater sewer that runs down the middle of lot 1. And there's also a KCP&L easement.
Mm-hmm.
The stormwater sewer is going to be moved over to the west, so they'll be underneath Beverly.
Okay.
That's going to be at the expense of the developer. And that will realign across Martway, then go a little bit down the west side of lot 2 and empty out into the creek. KCP&L is doing a partial release of their easement because they don't have a clear identification of where their new utilities are going to go.
Okay.
So once they identify where their new utilities will go, they'll come back and record that easement, release the old easement, and all that will be recorded with the Register of Deeds as a book entry, basically.
Okay, but the sewer's moving, so that gets to go away. Okay, great.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay. Anything else from the committee? All right. Moving on, we have one public presentation this evening on the Johnson County Homeless Shelter Center proposal from Laura Smith.
Yes, thank you. And it's really not my show this evening. So we have several guests here from the county to make a presentation, and I'd like to invite the county chair, Mike Kelly, up to kind of kick this off and then make the subsequent introduction. So Chairman Kelly.
Mayor, council members, it's great to be back in Mission, Kansas. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address what is a known community need. I appreciate the opportunity to have worked with Mission as mayor of a neighboring community. I appreciate your passions. Your passion, it was already mentioned tonight, your passion for sustainability, your care for not only our common home in the face of a changing climate, but your passion on behalf of your citizens. It is recognized and appreciated. So I come to you tonight to talk about the Homeless Services Center and what is really a unique opportunity to address this known need and a gap that is facing our housing continuum. It's a unique opportunity. I understand that this being unique means that it's not easy. The challenges facing the unhoused and those vulnerable based on the lack of affordable housing in Johnson County is known to all of us. And if the solutions were easy, it would have been solved a long time ago by better people than me or all of us. So I recognize that this is a unique ask. And I recognize that the timing of this ask and the process by which this ask has gone through is not ideal. I'll be the first to admit that. But that doesn't take away from the merit of the solution that we have an opportunity to jointly bring into our community that's going to help our most vulnerable residents. It's going to allow for us to save community resources. And it's really going to help us build a better quality of life in Johnson County. We all stand to benefit from it. And I appreciate that you may have taken the opportunity to look at some of the materials that have been provided to you. And you're going to hear from a fantastic voice in Stephanie Boyer from Restart, who was Restart was unanimously recommended by the committee who reviewed the RFPs that were received, the responses to the RFP that were received. I'm also glad to be joined this evening by two fellow county commissioners. The county commissioner who, among other cities, represents Mission, and that's Becky Fast, as well as County Commissioner Janae Hanslick. Also with me today is our Assistant County Manager, Joe Connor, who has been the lead in the county manager's office on this project. And we're going to be here to help answer some of the questions you may have and fill in maybe some of the gaps that you don't see directly from the presentation from Stephanie Boyer. But let me address one of those to you right now. And the question I'm sure that a lot of you have is, why not just the county? Why not just the county take care of this and not invite the cities or encourage the cities to support Restart? I think that's a fair question. And I don't want you to think by this request that the county is putting up its hands and saying, run Restart. We hope you're successful. The county is going to remain invested in this process, not only through ad valorem taxes of about $62,000 in support of the ongoing operations. The wraparound services that are going to be available from the county are notable. That includes resources from our Certified Community Mental Health Center, the Department of Health and Environment, the Housing Services Department, as well as the Kansas Workforce Partnership and Johnson County Community Colleges, all helping with programming to get people back on their feet and get them into sustainable permanent housing. We also have a reverter clause within the assignment agreement, meaning that if Restart does not fulfill its primary purpose within the next 10 years, the county steps in. But beyond that, there's an opportunity for us to collectively come together in a chorus of voices from not just one public entity, but 21 public entities that'll help show that we collectively recognize the importance of the problem and are dedicated to solving it in a way that can allow Restart to leverage private, philanthropic, parochial dollars and help better sustain the ongoing operations of this known community need. So I really appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much to your mayor for meeting with us and talking about these items, as well as your city manager. Thank you very much for doing that. Without further ado, let me introduce Stephanie Boyer. She's going to give her presentation, and we're here to answer your questions. Thank you for allowing us to be here.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having us this evening. As Chairman mentioned, my name is Stephanie Boyer. I am the CEO at Restart. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about exactly what the heck is the Homeless Services Center, and a little bit about Restart, and then about the potential partnership. So I was like, am I doing something or are you going to do it for me? Okay, perfect. Okay, so you can go ahead. We're already kind of just skipped over that part. You know, as these projects kind of come along, sometimes once they get moving, they start moving really fast, right? And that's sort of what's happened here. But I want to take a moment just to reflect back to say there's been a lot of work and a lot of study and a lot of folks all across Johnson County who've been diligently digging deep into the housing and homelessness issue in Johnson County for a number of years. So in 2021, UCS identified in their housing study unseen homelessness as a housing challenge across Johnson County. And that really then, you know, sparked more people to say, let's dig deeper into that. What does that really mean? What do we need? What does that look like? So additional data gathering, focus groups, all kinds of things were really done, which resulted in the Dignity Project report. And that's how the RFP was formed for this project. So it came out of the recommendations of that project. So a lot of intentionality has gone in and a lot of hard work into figuring out exactly what the right response to what we're seeing in the data, which is really critical. And I can't say that many communities approach this work in that way. And so it's been very exciting to be a part of this process. And I think it really lends Johnson County into a place where it really is going to set them up on a pathway really to address and end homelessness in Johnson County, which again, not many communities can really say. So we can go ahead. So what you have here is the latest point in time count data. So just real quick, if you don't know what that is, every year in January across the country, every community that receives HUD dollars through their continuum of care has to conduct what's called a point in time count. And so teams go out all across the community to capture the number of people who are living unsheltered, and then of course capture the people who might be living in a shelter that night or in a transitional housing. And so that's sort of the breakdown that you see there. That number rose this year to 250 people. Last year it was 235 people. It's by no means an exact number. We certainly can't find every person on one given night in 24 hours. And it never seems to fail. Whenever it happens, it's like the coldest night in January. And so oftentimes maybe that one night folks may have found somewhere to be for just that night. So, but it's a really good snapshot that helps us really to drive the data. And so as we dig into that though, right, we see that 23% of those folks were unsheltered. So, which is great. You know, you're not looking at 80 to 90% of people unsheltered. So you don't need, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of beds for that response. The other thing I would note there, right, is that 85% of those households were adults only, which again reflects the data from the Dignity Project, which had shown the same thing for many years, that the single adult population really was the population that there wasn't an answer for. And those are really the folks that we see living unsheltered. So who is Restart? Where you guys aren't too far from us. But Restart is a nonprofit that serves people experiencing homelessness all across the metro. So we do work in Jackson, Wyandotte, and Johnson County. And we've been doing this work for 44 years. So we've been at it a little while. It has changed a lot over the years as the face of homelessness has changed a lot over the years. We began in the basement of a church as an overnight shelter for single men, because 44 years ago, that really was the face of homelessness. And today we offer all of these different programs for youth, for families, for veterans, for single adults. And so we serve about 1,400 people a year across all those different programs. We really believe in approaching this work. We've changed a lot. It's not an overnight shelter model anymore. It's a program model. And so when folks come into each one of those programs, they're provided with a case manager and wraparound support services of employment and access to behavioral health and healthcare. And our focus, and they don't have to leave every day, right? So they're in this program for 30 to 90 days, usually at a time. And that works. So we have a 90% success rate of folks exiting that program and getting back into safe, stable housing. So the design of the program matters, right? And what your goal is. So if your goal is only to keep people sheltered for the night and survive the night, then overnight shelter is the solution, right? But if your goal is to end homelessness, then you have to invest in that in a complete package. So in terms of the Homeless Services Center, a few key things to really note. This is not intended to be a walk-up or drop-off shelter. We want this shelter working inside the coordinated entry system that Johnson County already has operating. And so that's really important because we don't want it to be operating outside of a system. We want it to be operating inside that system. So currently the coordinated entry system exists, and there are 4 hubs that are open publicly to folks who are at risk of homelessness or currently experiencing homelessness to go in and receive an assessment. And so that's important because we want to have everyone start at the same door and go through the exact same assessment, right? We want to see what's going on, and we want to identify, can we divert this person out of the system? And can we do that quickly? Can we resolve their homelessness quickly? And sometimes you can do that by connecting them back to a family member. You can find a solution that's not going to take a resource that's in the homeless service system. And so that's really important. And so you want to be able to match up their need with the right solution, right? Because again, our goal is to make sure that we're helping them find a pathway out of homelessness and back to stability. So, so when folks go through that process, that's how they also get access to different permanent supportive housing programs or rapid rehousing programs that are available across Johnson County. But it's sort of like a funnel because you have to figure out what do they qualify for, right? Those have varying different qualifications for them. And so again, we want to make sure we're matching up the right resource and we're not, over-resourcing someone. So when folks don't have an answer, they go on what's called the by name list, and they're ranked in order. That assessment gives them a number, and they are ranked in order by their score. So it's not a first come, first serve. It's ranked on vulnerability. And so as something they qualify for comes up, they get referred in first. And so that's where we'll take folks referrals into the center from that list. And so we want to make sure we're not circumventing the process, right? We're working with inside that coordinated entry system. You can go to the next one. So what's going to happen inside there? What's going on? So the Homeless Services Center really has kind of 2 major components. So the primary purpose is what we're calling the lodge, which is the shelter. So it will be 50 units of non-congregate shelter. So what that means is that folks will not share a room. It's one person, they have their own private room and their own private bathroom. So this is a hotel. Basically, they have a hotel room, right, to themselves. So that's really key. It's a newer sheltering strategy that HUD's really been pushing for the last, really since the pandemic. And it is a better practice as well, just for folks to be able to come in and really focus on themselves and not have to deal with the other challenges that a roommate or multiple roommates might also be going through. So you often see much better results as well in this type of setting. So 50 units, so 50 people at a time in there, and we'll operate similar to our other programs, a 30 to 90 day stay. They're going to have a case manager, and they're going to have access to all those support services from, again, behavioral health, employment, all of those things. And, that's our focus, right, is that they're going to be an exit from homelessness. The second component is what we're calling the residences, which will be 25 units that'll be converted into studio apartments for a longer transitional living, where folks can live for up to 24 months. And so that's really important because there will be some folks that are going to work really hard in that 30 to 90 days to resolve their issue. But there are going to be some extra challenges that they're just not going to be able to overcome in that time. Right. So we want to make sure that we have some way that we can kind of keep moving them along down that continuum. So one population in particular that this often happens with is seniors. So they're often living on Social Security or disability, a very fixed minimal income typically, and they really need to be in a senior housing development that's based on their income for their rent, right? To ensure they have, long-term housing stability. And those wait lists are often very long. Sometimes they can be a year or two long for folks to get into those. So we want to make sure that in those different circumstances that happen, there's, where there's a way that we can still be providing that supportive service, but there's case management and things along with that that are going to keep moving them along through that process till they get to that permanent solution. Next slide. United Community Services is forming together an oversight and advisory board, which will be made up of key stakeholders and community members that will be part of this journey, which we're very excited about. So they'll be reaching out to some municipalities as well. So if anyone wants to think about that, we'll plant the seed tonight. So you can go to the next slide. So when we talk about community benefits of this project, there's a ton of them. But tonight we'll primarily focus really on the financial part of it, right? Because there's a rippling effect of the community benefits when someone gets off the street and housed. And a couple things I didn't note earlier, which are important to note, is that 40% of those folks who were living unsheltered in Johnson County are employed currently. And 63% of the people that interacted with the entire system over last year were employed or had some kind of income like Social Security or disability. So it's not that folks aren't out there, doing their best and working hard. It's finding the right housing solution that matches their income. So when you talk about costs, right? So every city, every county, every community is expending an exorbitant amount of money right now on people experiencing homelessness in their community. And so when you look at this is just a graphic to sort of demonstrate that emergency and medical services response. So that includes like law enforcement, EMS, emergency room, right? That folks are encountering with, and it's just the nature of living unsheltered. That costs 18 times more than it does for us to house someone. And incarcerating folks costs 7 times more, right? And in neither of those solutions is there an end to their homelessness, right? It's just a vicious cycle that just keeps occurring. So we really are here tonight and, seeking out, a public-private partnership with all the cities across Johnson County as part of this project. So another thing to note on the transitional housing, we'll be able to access some vouchers for that program. So we'll have some rental income coming in from that, which will help support the operating budget. So we've been very strategic in sort of designing the approach to the operating funds for this to really diversify where they're coming from, because typically this work does rely very heavily on grant funding, which ebbs and flows and can change. And when we see changes at the federal level, we start to see significant changes in how funding is distributed, and those kinds of things. So we're always in this, kind of ebb and flow game. So as we've done this work a long time, we've really learned you have to really diversify and have some stronger streams of where that money's some foundation that you're really counting on. And so that's what you could sort of see represented here is that rental income, the population-based funding that we're seeking, and then of course, indirect funding and direct funding that Restart will raise. So that will be through grants and as well as through individual donations, foundations, corporations, faith-based community, all of those things. So we do all that now. So I think that's most of that one. You can move on. Oh, there we go. So where are we now? So we have officially submitted our special use permit process to Lenexa. So there is a special use permit required. And so we've been hosting some public engagement with that's been targeted right now to the neighborhood and the businesses close by where the center is being proposed. And we have a couple of other neighborhood meetings scheduled later in August for the entire Johnson County community to be able to come and attend and learn more about the project. So you can go to the next one. There we go. So those dates are on there, the August 21st and 22nd. And we've got some flyers for that we're happy to send out to if you guys want to share those out with your constituents as well. So we've submitted the application. We go before the Planning Commission in Lenexa on August 26th and before the City Council of Lenexa on September 17th. So if we're successful in that special use permit process, then we would close on the building at the end of October and we would begin some renovations to the site. We would expect that would take until about early fall of 2025 for it to open. Next one, I think we're just at questions now.
I think we're going to go into public comment first, and then we'll go into committee comment. Were there any other follow-up items before we head into that? Okay. So is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? Oh, sorry. Are you good?
If I could address just a couple quick things,
yeah,
and then invite
please.
Stephanie to touch on them as well, that I think might aid in your consideration. One of the things that's has really stood out to me is that through this programming process, there's a 90% success rate, which is really remarkable. And thinking about the people that can get housed, 90% is really just fantastic. One of the things I'd like Stephanie to address is this safety, not only for the people inside of the buildings, but for the community, as well as I'd like you to hear the conversation that happened with the community meetings that have already taken place between residents and businesses within the immediate area.
Sure. See, I knew I was forgetting a few things. So in terms of safety and security, right, we know that's important to everyone. It's important to the whole community and it's important to us. We want people to also feel safe coming there and we want the community to feel safe as well. So we're really intentional when we approach this work, and as we've been working with the architects looking at the site, one of the key things to start with, right, is to make sure that there is controlled access to the building. And so folks will have to be let in by someone inside the building who can verify that they're supposed to be there, right? We don't allow guests at the property unless it's like a case manager or a worker from like another organization that's like help supporting someone. The property will be fenced and have a gate that at both entrances that will have access control as well. It's a pretty big parking lot, so we want to control what's happening on that parking lot. We won't probably be using all those spaces, so we want to make sure we know what's happening with that. We do have obviously 24-hour staff who are well equipped and trained in a lot of different ways to be able to handle a lot of situations, and interior and exterior cameras. Staff are making hourly interior and exterior rounds through the building as well. So we do take that very seriously. I'm sorry, now what was the other thing?
Business.
Oh yeah, the meetings. So we hosted, like I said, 2 neighborhood and 2 business meetings for the surrounding area. You know, overall, I mean, folks have a lot of questions, but they were, you know, glad to learn about what it is. They had heard a lot of different things, and what they learned was not what they heard. So that was good to clear up any, you know, the wrong messaging. And, you know, the business community overall really was like, they were happy that there was going to be something somewhere for folks to go, because they expressed they're having some challenges with folks experiencing homelessness. And one expressed that they recently lost a pretty significant office lease because when the folks came to sign, there was someone in their lobby experiencing homelessness that had all their stuff spread out everywhere. And the company decided to walk out and not sign the lease. So he was obviously really devastated about that and upset. But he saw this as a solution, right? Because he was like, there is nowhere for this gentleman to go, you know? So while he's of course upset about it, he also recognized there wasn't an answer for him. And so he was happy to hear that there would be an answer. And both he and the Sam's Club, which will be our neighbor, we're both excited to have the possibility of employing people. Many of the businesses expressed they have many jobs open that they cannot fill, really critical positions to sort of keep their operations going. So we've already connected our employment person with them to start building those relationships and seeing what we can do there. So neighbors are really, we had several neighbors that came to both meetings, which was really great. And as they came back to the second one, you know, they weren't sure at the first one. And as they came back to the second one, they were a little more sure. I think what they really were looking for is, are they going to know us? And if they have a concern, who do they call, right? And so they expressed that they once had a halfway house in their neighborhood that they had some problems with, and they didn't have anyone to reach out to, and it was very frustrating to them. So, you know, we've committed, of course, to the businesses and the neighborhood that we're a neighbor and we are here to be partners, and we want them to know us, and we will gladly host regular, you know, opportunities for them to come in and share, but they will also know how to contact all of our team members to the first sign of any concern. We definitely want to know. So.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. If there's no other comments, we'll move into some public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item? If you are participating via Zoom, please submit your comments through the chat feature. If you are in person tonight, please raise your hand and we will invite you to the podium. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. We'll go you right there, and then Kim, you can come up after her.
Good evening. I'm Jana Beery, and I am a resident of Mission and a taxpayer in Mission. I'm here tonight as a representative of the Good Faith Network. It's a Johnson County interfaith group composed of nearly 30 congregations across 3 faith traditions that advocates for proven solutions to our community's most pressing problems. We represent the more than 1,500 people who gathered in person to stand shoulder to shoulder in support of ending homelessness and creating affordable housing at our May 7th assembly just this year. This fall, hundreds more will gather again for the Good Faith Network small group listening sessions held across the county, including here in Mission, to hear about our community's hope for and commitment to ending homelessness. Tonight, you have heard about the opportunity to make this financial investment in a center that will be permanently and centrally located, open year-round, professionally staffed, offering the physical security and stability to a group of residents who are often overlooked. They are residents of this county, and we need to treat them with dignity. This center has been a long time coming, and it has become undeniably necessary as our community's point-in-time count continues to rise each year. You saw the latest data of 250 people homeless in this county on any given night, including tonight and including January 1st when it was like -4 degrees. This is happening, and this is the largest, wealthiest county in Kansas. I know there's a small number of highly vocal opponents to this homeless service center, and I'm sure many of you have received calls, emails, comments from residents, either against Mission contributing or to funding it, and perhaps even its very existence. I and many others who've met through this work choose to be involved with Good Faith Network, to be a counter narrative to the NIMBYism that exists here, and that stands for not in my backyard. It often rears its ugly head when we talk about homelessness. And on a personal note, I have seen a transitional housing work. I volunteer several times a month with the Veterans Community Project. And it is a safe, secure property, 49 homes for homeless veterans. And it is working and it's beautiful. And I would not mind if it was next door to my house. I really wouldn't. I feel safe when I'm there. I've been in the houses helping do the repair for the next person that comes in. And I have met many of the residents and they have dignity, they have purpose, and they're on their way. Is that my timer? Okay. Thank you.
With what I do, I see a lot of shelters in a lot of locations. And me driving through, there is the factor of safety. And what I'm looking at is knowing that what are the numbers on who's comprising the homeless? 25% of the millennials who have jobs in Johnson County are homeless. They're working. So who is this serving? What demographic is this actually serving? Restart is a massive corporation has many facilities. They're in many projects. They are a nonprofit for profit. Never forget that nonprofits are there for profit. And I look at that, they can fund themselves. They're massive. They got a lot of things. I've gone to some of their stuff. But we in Mission are struggling. I want to know how come the county shut down our health department up here in the mental services again. After I spoke at the county and they opened it up for 2 days a week and they shut it down again. Why cannot we have money allocated to that? Because we got bus service, people can walk and they can drive. There's more things. The shelters are Band-Aids. Nobody's discussing that Kansas has not raised its minimum wage from $7.25 an hour. And if you do the numbers, you cannot afford to rent in Johnson County or in the state of Kansas. So let's really address what some of the issues are instead of just the Band-Aids and the feel-good thing. When are county, cities, fire department, libraries, parks going to close their checkbook and stop spending money that residents don't have to pay? State of Kansas throws out $12 million right now, so that way they can entice prior Kansans to move back to Kansas. What a waste of money. Where could we have utilized that $12 million for their project? So you got to start looking at really what's making up homelessness, because nobody's addressing that. There's a lot of factors. You're going to have some people who will choose always never to go and stay in a place. I am not against shelters, but I've been in many states and I've been around a lot of those shelters. They provide a service. They can fund it themselves. As far as I'm concerned, I'm okay with the location. They got the money from the feds to buy the property. I wish I could get that type of money for my businesses and my nonprofit. So what are the real issues and the conversations that cities, counties, schools, libraries, parks department need to have? Thank you for homelessness.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Anything online? Nope. Okay. We will move into any committee comments. Trent, I think you had your hand up if you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a couple questions, maybe one for Stephanie and then one for Chairman Kelly. One of the items, it seems like all the cities, is there any contingency plan if any of the cities elects not to participate in the cost share agreement? That might be the first question. And then the second question I had was just about numbers on what this will serve. It sounded like between the lodge and the second phase, the transitional phase, there was 75 people more or less. And then the pit number was 250. So we're not expecting to house everyone with this, right? Just but like we would take a bite out of the apple essentially with what we're available to do at this hotel. So those were the couple questions I had to start off.
Yeah, so I'll start with the last one first. Yeah, so if you remember, there was 23% of those folks that were living unsheltered at the time. So the most of those other folks were actually already in a shelter or a transitional housing program that's already being operated in Johnson County. So this is really intended to sort of fill that gap of those kind of 23%. So 75 units essentially, right, will have a pretty big impact immediately. And then, of course, once the first 25 come into that transitional, they could be there for a year or two. So we wouldn't expect a lot of turnover in there. But we would expect that at minimum quarterly, the 50 rooms are turning over for folks. So yeah, so we would expect about probably 225 people could be served through the center annually.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah. The other part, yeah, we won't be coming back to cities and saying, oh, so-and-so didn't participate, so we are asking for a higher contribution. What we will have to do then is that just means we'll have a heavier lift on raising that indirect and direct support. So if you remember that sort of graph of the kind of public partnership, we've kind of really almost broken that into quarters, right? Which is provides the 4 legs to the stool, right? So we'll have to make up for that in that area.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Well, yeah.
Okay, first I want to say you all put this together really quickly. I mean, from 2001 to now, that's impressive. I've worked with Restart in the past. I work with Cornerstones of Care, and a few years ago, you used to help shelter some of the foster kids that we couldn't find placement for right away. So I have worked with Restart before and find it to be a great organization. I'm happy to know that you all will be doing this. There's a couple of things that I'd like to say, and Kim, you're right. We aren't looking at some of the things that cause homelessness and fixing those on the front end. But I don't know that we ever will. You know, Johnson County isn't ever going to be known for affordable housing. And a lot of it is because it's the whole not in my backyard. I mean, we've seen communities around Johnson County that don't even want multiple family, you know, in their area. So I don't know that we're going to be able to solve homelessness on the front end. But what I like about what you're doing is that you are utilizing some of the systems that we already have in place to decide who can get help where and solve some issues immediately. And I love the transitional housing piece because some people do need a little bit more time to work through the issues that they have. And in answer to one of your questions, Kim, you know, 51% of unhoused people became unhoused because of domestic violence. So that's going to be a big chunk of the people that are going to be served by this. We have one shelter in Johnson County, one shelter. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the people who can't get into that shelter, because I've made those phone calls looking for shelter for women, mm-hmm. And men, it's not just women, have to go into a Missouri. So it's not like there's a wall built around Johnson County. We'll only be serving Johnson County. This is a metro area. There's going to be flowing between state lines and counties. That's just the way that it is. You know, the cost of living is another huge contributor to homelessness. It's not just for people who aren't working hard. Many people, as you said, are working. It's just life has gotten to be super, super expensive. So I'm more than happy for Mission to contribute to this because I know that some of our residents will end up there. It's not just a county thing. And I do believe, as you know, Mr. Kelly has said, that we all have to put up some skin in the game. You know, this is a county-wide problem. It's a nationwide problem. We all need to do our part to make sure that we are addressing this so that, you know, again, it's not going to solve it, but at least we are going to take a bite out of that apple and we're going to keep taking bites until, you know, we get to the end. So I really appreciate the hard work that's been done on the front end and am more than happy to do whatever I can to support the work that goes forward.
Thank you.
Hi. I had a question about the outcomes that you mentioned. I think I heard a 90% success rate. Could you help me understand how we're defining success in this case? Is it being placed in a home with a certain time frame?
Yeah, so so by the time they leave whichever program they're in, that there is a successful integration back into a safe, stable housing situation. So, you know, that looks a little bit different for everybody, what that looks like. Some people that is their own, you know, their own apartment or their own home. Some people, it might be a shared housing, you know, situation. Some folks that we find need to actually be living in a group home because they need more support. So there's so many different variety of like, you know, stable housing solutions that folks will go to. But it varies a little bit by program, right? So some of our programs are that 30 to 90 day, but we also have some 12 to 18 to 24 month programs. So it's all of those kind of combined together, but yeah, but 90% of each of the people that we serve exit from that program into a safe, stable housing situation.
And when we do say stable, are we looking at the duration of time they remain in that new home?
Some of the programs that we do aftercare and have tracking and follow up with folks. Some programs we do not have funding or staffing to be able to necessarily do that. Of course, the homeless management information system, which is basically like an online medical record, essentially, that if folks were to enter back in, we could see that they entered back in. But those systems aren't the greatest in like data extraction and reporting, but yeah, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I will say also to that, right, one of the case managers' job when they're really working on those housing placements with folks though, is while they're with us, we're really looking at like creating that budget and what that really looks like. And that's why it's so important to match up the right housing solution for folks so that we can, you know, give them the best foot forward for that long-term housing stability. So if we put someone in there and they're spending 50% of their income on their housing, they're at risk of experiencing homelessness again, which is what we see across the community is most people are overburdened in what they're spending now. And then as prices of everything have risen, it's really pushing a lot of folks over that edge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other further comments? Yeah, I did just want to say, you know, I had raised some of the process concerns and thank you to the county for addressing some of those. And I think, you know, having it come forward at this point in our budget cycle is not ideal, but I think there were some explanations given for why the timing worked out that way. But, you know, I always forget who the quote attribution should go to, but, you know, the old adage, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think that really applies here. You know, at the end of the day, I don't want to put the process over the substance. And I think that support for the shelter and existence of the shelter is consistent with, you know, what we've been trying to do as a city with some of our other programs like Communities for All Ages and some of the other you know, efforts we've made to make Mission a safe and welcoming place. And I think that includes supporting the most vulnerable residents, whether they're in Mission or in the county. And so, you know, agree that this won't be a complete solution, but that shouldn't be a reason not to take this step in my view. And so ultimately, you know, some quirks in the process, but supportive of the project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and Kim raises a good point too. You know, homelessness, there's many factors at play. And just as a coda to what Councilmember Loudon said, and even the mayor, I did want to just for the benefit of the public, remind the audience that, you know, we're under no illusions that these actions will be silver bullets and solve everything, but we've also done things like, you know, the soon to be completed Mission Bowl project. We've, you know, got 20% of those units are affordable housing. And we have other projects in play where we have, you know, won those concessions from developers. So there are things, and plus the other programs that Mayor Flora mentioned too. So I think we should remind ourselves that we have tried to chip away holistically at this as well, and that the action we take regarding this solution should be viewed in the context of those actions too, that we are, I think, doing a decent job to begin, you know, chipping away at this in a way that sometimes we maybe take for granted or gloss over. So I did just want to highlight that because I think some of those actions maybe help move the needle ever so slightly, if not ever being panaceas completely, but something that we're doing at least. So.
Yeah. I would note to kind of tag on a little bit to that too, right? That there are a lot of folks that actually are holding a housing voucher today in Johnson County, but they cannot find a unit that they can, that they can utilize it on. And so I think, the county's made investment as well into some incentives to try to really bring on landlords, and that's been really successful this year. So we look forward to helping to continue to get that to grow. And on that transitional housing side, that's one of the exciting things I think about it as well, because when folks are ready to leave, the voucher that they had there, we can place them in the community somewhere with that as well. And then we'll replace that with another one. So we're beginning to sort of create some systems there, but really also getting out there and building those relationships with landlords and offering those incentives. And oftentimes, we have a lot of luck with landlords because if someone's on a voucher program, it's going to be someone that we're following long-term with case management. And so reassuring them that if they ever have a problem or concerns that they can call us, it usually helps to also get them to give it a chance. So.
And if I could just tag along really briefly to, your point, Mr. Boltinghouse or Councilmember Boltinghouse and Dakota to Councilmember Loudon here. There's great things going on in Mission, right? And there's great things going on in other communities in Johnson County that are trying to address the root causes. We all recognize that there's more to do with affordable housing. There's more to do by finding and bringing in better employment opportunities that pay livable wages, and by livable being able to live in Johnson County wages. And there's more that we can be doing collectively together to enhance that quality of life and that sustainability for our residents. I think one of the things that I'm very excited about for this project is the idea that we will be better supporting the coordinated entry system. More coordination between your law enforcement officers, your co-responders, the street outreach teams, really flexing that muscle of coordination between the county, between the cities, between departments and nonprofits. In the way it was described as a funnel of knowing what services are available and how we best get people to help, whether it be the Housing Services Center or whether it be a Veterans Assistance Project, or just knowing and working together in a more coordinated fashion helps us get better outcomes for our residents. And, one of the things that I'm really going to take from this project and the process by which we've gone through is that there is an opportunity for deeper, better communications between the county and the cities. I really look forward to that. Sitting where you have sat, I understand that there's great work being done. I look forward to really deepening those relationships and building foundations so that we can address some of those root causes in unique, innovative ways. Because I think that's a hallmark of Johnson County. It has been, and it will be for the future. So goes Johnson County, so goes the metro region, so goes the state of Kansas. So we've got a great opportunity here.
Yep, Ben.
Yeah, just two things that come to mind here at the end of the conversation that I think is wrapping up is I'm looking at the proposed funding amounts for the cities here on the slide deck, and look at the amount, $7,638, and just thinking all the things we do in a given year that cost more than that. Painting a fence, renovating a bathroom at the community center. I don't think this ask is that huge. And in turn, what we're doing is providing what I think is a really wise move in terms of diversifying the funding strategy. Because what you don't want to see as a project like this, get a few steps out the door and then struggle because whatever grant, that was 90% of the funding dried up. So that's something that just strikes me, is that the ask is so reasonable that it's sort of something I can't find myself really wringing my hands about too much. And the other thing is, Ms. Donaway is, again, correct. There are some things that I think should be changing at the state level, and we should all be asking for in a very impassioned way. But I also can't really find it within myself to sit around waiting for them to solve all those problems. when people are out in the cold. And so, yeah, I think it's a reasonable ask for a good program.
Yeah.
One more thing. I could go on for days, but I won't. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about homelessness as a community. I think that we really need to talk about it more because there are a lot of myths out there. People think that those people aren't trying hard enough, or they're all drug addicts, or this, that, or the other. When you really look at the population, you find out that it could be anyone. It could be your neighbor. It really, is somebody who has a chronic illness, can lose their home, a family breaking up. Domestic violence, as I mentioned before, there are so many reasons why people end up without a home, and it's those 12.5% of Kansas are still uninsured, and mental health is so difficult to find and to pay for, between the therapy, the psychiatrist, and the meds, if those are all of the things that you need. I've worked with people trying to put those puzzle pieces together, and it's not an easy task. So, but on the good end, working in not-for-profit myself, we live in an amazingly generous and caring community on both sides of the state line. And the more you work in this area, the more you find that there can be so many partnerships between agencies. And the more we talk about it and the more we work together, the less people fall through the cracks and the less people end up homeless. So again, thank you for the hard work that you're doing, because it really is not an easy thing to do, but I have hope that we're at least moving in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll ask Ms. Smith if you could advise on some next steps here.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to all of our presenters this evening. And I should have started by, many of you will remember that we had Rita Carr in March come to a meeting and present that point in time information, just to help educate us on an ongoing basis. So I think that helps form that foundation. And I really appreciate Chairman Kelly and the county staff in addressing the mayor's questions and my questions about process and timing. And I think a lot of those stem from the fact that while the ask is reasonable, I think it goes to Councilmember Boltinghouse's point of what happens if the larger cities don't come in, and then what does that do and coming back. So it's very reassuring to understand and have some clarity around that. The county had asked for commitments from the city by August 20th. We happen to have a city council meeting on August 21st. So we won't be calling a special meeting to address that, but based on the feedback that I've heard, the mayor and I've talked, and I think we would bring a resolution back on your 21st agenda. So we'll be a little bit late presenting that back to you, Chairman Kelly, but that would be the plan for council consideration of that in 2 weeks.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for all coming and spending your Wednesday evening with us. We appreciate you taking the time and presenting all of the information. So thank you. All right. We will now move into our action items. Our first action item this evening is the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Bolts.
Thank you. Draft minutes of the July 10th Community Development Committee meeting were included for review and acceptance in your package tonight.
Great. Any comments? Otherwise, I'll take a recommendation.
When we take it to council on the consent agenda.
Great. Thank you. All right. Next, we will consider a short-term rental ordinance from Brian Scott.
Okay, thank you. The item on tonight's agenda, which will be for your consideration on the 21st, is an ordinance providing for a new chapter 675 to Title 6 of Mission's Municipal Code, establishing licensing and regulating the short-term rental of dwellings and dwelling units. So we've talked about this before at a couple of work sessions, one in May and one in July. I won't really belabor the point too much of all of this, but I'll just kind of go over the highlights of the proposed ordinance. Again, anyone that rents a dwelling or dwelling unit as a short-term rental will be required to get a license from the city. And the cost of that license will be $500. That was the amount that we established at our last work session. The The short-term rentals will have a minimum required stay of 2 nights. Rentals cannot be used for gatherings, meetings, or any kind of event that would allow third party or non-renting guests to attend. The occupancy of short-term rentals is limited to 2 adults per bedroom, no more than 10 individuals total in the dwelling unit. The license is only applicable to the property being rented and is non-transferable. The short-term rental cannot hold more than, the owner of the short-term rental cannot hold more than 2 licenses. And then the number of licenses per parcel is limited. So there's only 1 license allowed on R1 single family and R3 in townhome districts. 2 dwelling units are allowed to be rented or licensed, excuse me, for properties that are zoned R2 in downtown neighborhood district. And then 4 dwelling units are allowed to be licensed for parcels that are zoned R4 through R6, and then MS1, MS2, and mixed use districts. And then finally, each owner must designate a management agent who resides within 40 miles of the property and who will regularly inspect the property and be responsible for its care and the actions of any renters and take service for the city notices of any violations. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. As I stated at the work session, we also intend to contract with Granicus as a software provider to help us regulate short-term rentals to ensure compliance. So I was in discussions with them the other day, and they're excited to have us as a potential client. So.
Great. Thank you. Any comments from the public or the committee? All right, we'll go Kim and then behind Jeff after.
Kim Donaway, Mission, Kansas resident. I do have short-term rentals, though I'm different from a lot of them, friends of mine who have what I call the party. Mine usually cater to the business traveler or to people who have sold their homes, and they have a transition of whether it's a week to 3 weeks. Maximum has been a month before they get to move into their new place. I get musicians coming that are attending summer programs with their parents where they'll come for a week because they have those summer programs. I object to the $500. That's copying Shawnee and that whole mess that happened over there, because they talked to me about that, was due to a Prairie Village boy cookie cutting up a house in Shawnee into 7 units. Shame on him. And I told Shawnee to fight it, and they did, and they won. I have two-bedroom houses. I don't allow parties, but my circumstances are I'm grandfathered in Fairway. It's $120. Kansas City, Missouri, it's $200. So for example, when I run numbers, the locale is $10 per unit for apartment. So their revenue, the estimate that I made on the very low end was $3.5 million. So if I divide 2,000 into 3.5 million, do the numbers, it's like 0.004%. For my little single family, 2-bedroom that I limit is 4% cost. There's a reason why short-term showed up in the market anyway, and it was because people can't afford the rents on housing. We have fixed cost. I have a house that went up $400 due to county and city and all the other agencies per month, and I'm held hostage to that. I have no choice in the matter unless I want to get rid of it. That is a fact. But short-term rentals, yes, there will be bad actors. But I'm not a bad actor, and I've had my properties for years. And some of the things I see is can be addressed in codes. All these investors coming in, and I turned in a bunch of them from Texas that are cutting up houses in Mission, and nobody was paying attention. I handed you written letters, Laura, about that, because nobody was paying attention in December. I know how to gut a house, been doing it 30 years. I see what's going on in the city. So those things are being overlooked. What about the residents who live in apartments or condos? and they're subletting out and putting their places on Airbnb. And I don't see that. Any provision for that. Because that happens. So how is that going to be addressed? Are they going to pay $500? And if not, then I feel I'm being discriminated against with a legitimate business that I file 1065 returns on. So, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
My name is Joe. I'm a resident of Mission. I started my first Airbnb when my father had cancer and I had to find a way to get back into the city while still maintaining a residence in Los Angeles where I had a business running. Airbnb allowed me to spend a month here, spend a month there, help my father get a lot of his affairs in order, and help my family out during a very difficult time. With that, I wouldn't have been able to run my own Airbnb under these ordinances because even though I had quiet title to the property, the statute would prevent me from running that Airbnb because I didn't own the actual property I was using. Secondly, the STR thing, I'm just going to shorten things down. The STR market is already so saturated that these rules are unnecessary and behind the times. If the city actually cared about housing and the housing crisis, they wouldn't be considering property tax and sales tax abatements for large properties renting 2-bedroom apartments for $2,800, which is more than I ever paid living in Los Angeles in decent neighborhoods. These large apartment buildings are also participating in what I think will be seen nationwide in illegal collusion with other large landlords using algorithmic price controls such as RealPage. The fee is prohibitive at $500, especially considering a short rental license, non-short term, is required on top of this. This stops someone from renting out a spare room if there's a disagreement with a roommate or romantic partner and someone moves out. This stops people who occasionally rent out their dwelling in order to make ends meet because of the rising prices of insurance, high interest rates, and property tax. This ordinance would prevent guests from holding business meetings, viewing the eclipse in the yard, such as what happened a few years ago, as well as having family come and visit for dinner. So grandma can't have her grandkids come over and eat with her under this ordinance. I often use Airbnb as I travel the country. Most times I'm never in the same city for more than one night. This would stop people like me from being able to stay in Mission, which is the safe kind of city I look for when looking for a place to stay. What hard data does the city even have to put such restrictive regulations in place? When I personally checked, there were roughly 10 to 15 STRs for rent on Airbnb and Mission across several months. All of this regulation is going way overboard for less than 20 units. That included all options, including room only. The city would be purchasing expensive software of $3,000 for less than 20 units. I found my information in a 10-minute or less search. I never once had a large party at my Airbnb, nor was I ever required to call the police to handle a guest issue. Does the city have any hard data about the current impact of STRs on the city? How often are the police called on the STRs? How often are there disruptive parties? Is this being tracked yet? How will this be tracked in the future? The city isn't mentioning in the ordinance any of the fees that they get for platforms such as Airbnbs, fees that go to the city already, because Airbnb does collect money from the Airbnb runners, the actual, and this also targets small independent operators in favor of large corporations. Don't be corporate sellouts.
Great. Thank you. Is there anybody on the committee that would like to comment? Great. Otherwise, I will take a recommendation. Oh, yeah. I don't see any. Yeah. Yep. No hands. I mean, I will just add that this is an issue that I have heard probably the most about since I've taken position here with City Council, and it's something that we've worked for a very long time to kind of wordsmith and make sure all of the ordinances are correct, and it was very thoughtful, but I understand a lot of small business owners, you know, the implications that could have, but I also know that there's also a lot of folks in Mission that have been very negatively impacted by some not so great short-term rentals. So with that being said, we'll take a recommendation unless there's any other comments.
No, I'll say something. Yeah. I mean, living right next door to one, I can say it hasn't been great. There was a pretty big rager. I was out of town when that happened, but it is just weird having people come in and out of a house next door that you don't know. It's, you know, it's just bizarre, really. And we decided, I mean, 500 was at the low end of what we were thinking of doing, because we really, you know, I understand that this is something that people are doing, and it's a great way to make a side hustle if you've got some extra property, but we need housing stock for small families. And so we really want people who are willing to pay the $500 to play. It's, you know, we don't really want everyone in the city doing this. We do want to kind of keep things regulated. And I'm not apologetic about it.
All right. Yeah, regular agenda. Thank you. Next, we will consider a nuisance party ordinance, also from Brian Scott.
Okay. Somewhat associated with short-term rental and discussion just had. We are also proposing a new section 2015.113 of Article 6 of Chapter 215 of the Municipal Code. And this will provide for a regulation, essentially of what we're calling nuisance parties. And defines nuisance parties as a gathering of 5 or more people on a residential property that results in any of the following activities. This is a minor listing of everything in the code, the proposed ordinance. Unlawful sale of furnishing, possession, or consumption of alcoholic beverages. Unlawful use of possession of marijuana or any drug-controlled substance. Any activity that would constitute a violation of any of the provisions of Section 215.111 of the Mission Municipal Code pertaining to disturbing the peace. A conduct which constitutes assault and battery, property damage, and discharging firearms. And essentially, that's the definition of a nuisance party. There's more in the code. Those are the highlights. And it shall be unlawful for any owner or person having the right to possession of any residential premises, whether individually or jointly with others, to cause or permit a social gathering on the premises to become a nuisance party. And it shall be unlawful for any person not domiciled at the site of the nuisance party to fail or refuse to leave the premises immediately after being told to leave by a police officer. In the continuation of a nuisance party, an hour or more after an ordinance to disperse has been given by police shall constitute a separate violation of Section 215.13. So that is the summation of the nuisance party ordinance.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public or the committee? All right, we'll do the same order again.
Kim Donaway, Mission, Kansas resident. I do want clarity on the gathering of 5 people or more and consuming alcoholic beverages. So does that mean that when people are getting together for Chiefs party, K-State, college graduation parties, that they're now a nuisance party because they're 5 or more? Our First Amendment rights in the Constitution allow us to gather. So I want clarity on that one. And then the second one, to prevent us from having to reopen up this ordinance, because it's not if, it's when. The state of Kansas is one of 4 states out of 50 who have not legalized marijuana. I looked that puppy up at 3 a.m. So Governor Kelly has already stated that she will sign a bill for medical. So somebody's got a burr under their belt to stick marijuana on here. Why don't you put fentanyl on here instead? Because that will never be legalized. And that is killing people. But I really object to marijuana, because when Governor Kelly does pass this, we got to reopen this, because then the state actions nullifies this ordinance. So then you're going to waste, again, our taxpayer dollars and our time, because this will violate what's coming down the pike, because I've talked to representatives and senators, and they have been pushing it and writing the bills to get it through. We studied marijuana in the 70s. I know the medical benefits of it. I have that science. I have those studies from back then. It's just not if, it's when. Albeit the state of Kansas may be the last state, so be it. But still, take the word out of marijuana, because I think that's ludicrous at this stage. And put in fentanyl. Put in the hardcore, the ecstasy that really cause the issues that are being sold. And that's it. Thank you.
Joe, if you'd like to go ahead and come up.
Joe, Mission residents. This ordinance is unconstitutional under the First and 14th Amendments. Hague v. CIO enshrine the right for assembly in public places. The justices struck down an ordinance that vested an uncontrolled discretion in a city official to permit or deny any group the opportunity to conduct a public assembly in any public place. De Jong versus Oregon, it recognized that the right of a peaceable assembly is a right cognate to those of free speech and free press and is equally fundamental. With that, there's no need for section 215.113 because any event that could reasonably lead to 215.113 is already covered by section 215.111, the noise ordinance, other ordinances in the 215 sections and other sections of the code. Many of the items of 215.113 could only be determined by the presence of a police officer already entering the property. There's already an ordinance 215.100 that prevents urinating or defecating anywhere in the public view. So if that's an issue, let's enforce the rule that's already on the law that's already on the books. This could be construed to prevent graduation parties for anyone graduating from high school or higher education. And personally, I think the only reason the word marijuana is used in this ordinance is so police can enter the property without probable cause. This will stop neighborhood block parties, which create neighborhood cohesion and connection with neighbors. Also, does the city have any hard data on how many nuisance parties currently occur? Speaking on that earlier STR, there was one thing that when Ms. Luden spoke, there's nothing in the ordinance that speaks to penalizing when there's a rager, as you seemed to find that happened near you that goes on. I know the house you're talking about. There's nothing that penalizes when a rager that goes on or when bad actors are behaving badly. Back to nuisance parties, though. Again, the whole probable cause and getting around probable cause with marijuana is tired and trite. And I'm going to be so glad when that's no longer illegal so that it can't be used to bypass probable cause, because probable cause is important. I don't want to live under a tyranny. Please don't allow that to happen. Again, this is an unconstitutional statute. I look forward to it being struck down if you do pass it, because the right to assembly is enshrined under the right to free speech. And who knows, maybe if we're all lucky, a political organization that's having a social event will be rated as a nuisance party. And that one can be a ACLU issue. Who knows? Nobody knows what social means. I don't know what a social party is. Is political action still protected if it's a social party or if there's alcohol at the event?
3 minutes. Yep. Great. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, looking through it, I do actually agree. I think the use of the term marijuana is just redundant. We already specify that it's unlawful use of any drug or controlled substance. I think just striking the word marijuana there would make that an evergreen statement. So I would be, in favor of striking that term.
I would ask Chief, we've had this conversation internally, so I would ask the Chief to weigh in on that. I mean,
and I think the reason why that was specifically called out when it was drafted is because it is legal in so many other places, and so that allows the people that would be researching it to know that marijuana isn't legal in this area as of yet.
do you have a comment?
Yeah, I would like a little bit of clarification because so it becomes a nuisance party when it becomes loud and bothersome. I mean, because our intent is not to stop graduation parties or any of those sorts of things. So Brian, if you could just explain, you know, where that line is and how this is going to be, you know.
So it's a social gathering of 5 or more people on residential property that results in any of the following occurring. And then there's a list, you know, unlawful sale or furnishing, possession or consumption of alcoholic beverages, unlawful possession.
Like by underage or.
Right, yes.
Providing alcohol to minors.
I have a party at my house, I'm serving minors, that's an illegal act, that's a nuisance party.
So it's not just consenting adults getting together.
Right, yeah, that's not the intent, is to limit the number of people that get together at any event. It's when folks get together and these activities are occurring and the party gets out of hand, it becomes a nuisance party.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your clarification on that.
Mary had one other item, both related to that, and then I think also on the marijuana point, the ordinance does say that it has to be unlawful. So again, Brian, this wouldn't prohibit lawful use of alcohol, or if marijuana did become legal, it wouldn't prevent the lawful use of marijuana. Is that correct?
Because marijuana, as you stated, is not yet legal in the state of Kansas. And I will tell you,
I think if marijuana were to become legal in the state of Kansas, we would probably modify the system to recognize that.
and I mean, I would just remind, for those in the audience, that council's aware, every year for the last several in our legislative platform, we have advocated not only for the medical marijuana, but other, and we've had, so that's been a position that you've consistently taken. So I think you share some of those same viewpoints, but we are living under the laws that currently exist in the state.
Great. Anything else? Otherwise, I will take a recommendation. I'm assuming regular agenda. Regular agenda. Great, thank you. Where are we? Our 4th action item this evening is for approval of the Johnson Drive Traffic Signal Enhancements Design Contract from Stephanie Boyce.
Thank you. So this evening before you, we do have the approval of a contract with Olson for the design of the Johnson Drive Traffic Signal Enhancement Project. If you remember, back in May of 2023, you all obligated grant funds for this carbon reduction program grant that we received. It was an application in conjunction with MARC, the Mid-America Regional Council, to enhance the traffic signals on Johnson Drive between Broadmoor Street and Roe Avenue by installing network communications, pan, tilt, zoom cameras, traffic signal controllers, and it will allow Johnson Drive to become part of the Operation Greenlight program. And so that coordination of the traffic signals will help to reduce unnecessary delays, improve traffic flow, and reduce emissions that contribute to ozone pollution. So request for qualifications was issued in June of this year. Proposals were due July 12th. We received 2 proposals. A selection committee that was made up of city staff and MARC staff reviewed the submissions from Affinis Corporation and Olson, both who have local experience with Operation Greenlight and traffic signal enhancements. And although both firms demonstrated an understanding of the project requirements and they possess the qualified staff, the committee found that Olson's proposal to be more detailed and their approach to the project was more clearly articulated, especially what the city's needs are. And ultimately, we selected Olson to move forward in this process. The total project costs encompassing design, equipment, and installations, a little over $197,000 with a local match requirement of just under $40,000. The grant allocated, or the project allocated $48,580 for design and construction services. And we negotiated a design cost of $47,748, so just under that allocated amount of $48,000 with Olson. for these enhancements, and we recommend awarding this contract to them.
Thank you. All right, do we have any questions or comments? Great. Take a recommendation. Great, thank you. Yes, consent. Our fifth action item this evening is for approval of an interlocal agreement with Roeland Park for the Eastern Johnson County Bikeshare Program, also from Stephanie Boyce.
Great. This is another grant that we received under the carbon reduction program. And this will introduce 30 e-bikes to Mission and 20 e-bikes to Roeland Park to enhance mobility options, especially in the Northeast Johnson County, and integrate the electric bikes into our community. This application covers the cost of the e-bikes, the batteries, bike racks, wayfinding signs, promotional material, and operational expenses for 5 years. This was a joint application with Roeland Park. Mission is the lead agency on this and the project sponsor. The total project cost, including the equipment, signage, promotional material, and operations, is $628,810. The local match required for this grant is $125,760. Operation costs will be paid quarterly over 5 years. And the City of Mission will enter into, well, there's 2 interlocal agreements that we are under consideration this evening. The first one specifies KDOT's policy and procedures for this project. So they require us to enter into an agreement between KDOT, Mission, and Roeland Park. And also the second one would specifically be between the City of Mission and the City of Roeland Park for their reimbursement portion to the city. And that would equal $50,304 over the course of 5 years. And that's for the equipment and then later on the operation and maintenance. City of Roeland Park approved the interlocal agreements at their August 5th council meeting, so on Monday evening. Approval of the interlocal agreements will allow staff to move forward with the bidding process for the e-bikes, batteries, and the wayfinding signs associated with the Northeast Johnson County Bikeshare, which is being administered for KDOT. So we can't move forward with putting this out to bid until these agreements are approved. So we're looking for approval.
Great, thank you. Do you have any public or committee comments? Yep, Joe.
My name is Joe, resident of Mission. I think e-bikes are an amazing thing. I think they're going to be great for our city. I think they're going to be great for green living overall. One of my favorite things about them is if you put your phone in a Faraday bag and then rent an e-bike and go to different parts of the city, 5, 10, 15 miles away from each other, and then take your phone out of the Faraday bag, use it for a few minutes, put it back into the Faraday bag, close it up, and then move to 4 or 5 different locations. You can frustrate and confuse anyone who's doing surveillance on you who might be from a governmental organization. So yeah, e-bikes are amazing. And I think they're great for frustrating current counterintelligence that goes on with FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and other such organizations that are doing it unlawfully, as was shown by Edward Snowden through his documentation of PRISM. Thank you.
Okay, any committee comments? Otherwise, I will take a recommendation. Yeah, love it. Great. Our final action item tonight is for approval of a design contract for the localized drainage project from Brent Morgan.
Thank you very much. Like you said, this is a design contract with GBA for localized stormwater projects. Back in 2023, it was discussed and we created 2 revenue streams to kind of help out with some smaller storm and water issues throughout town. One is for sinkholes or emergency repairs, and that's about $150,000. And then we created $250,000 or allocated every year for localized nuisance projects. We created a ranking system with one of our engineering firms to rate these projects and score them basically 1 through however many projects we got in the queue. We've got about 10 or 11 right now and kind of working our way through that. We've got going on right now, projects 1, 2, 3, and 7. And the only reason you see that 7 in there, 250,000 a year. And if there's one project that's like 15 or 20 grand, you try to wrap that up in so we can help more residents throughout Mission. So the next 2 projects on the list are 4 and 5, and just want to get those in design, get the survey work done so we can get those projects moving forward in 2025 and keep on track with helping out the residents in Mission. The first project's on Hodges Drive, and it's just a drainage modification, adding a storm box and just getting water away from somebody's house that's having some not flooding issues, but water issues in their front yard. The second one is on 6347 West 49th and 6334 West 50th, and that is basically the backside of Apollo Gardens and 49th Street. It's only 2 addresses, but it snakes behind Apollo, comes down to 49th Street, and getting that water to a creek channel. Numerous issues over there, just trying to help the homeowners out over there and get the water from coming in and flooding their basements and stuff like that. So staff is recommending a contract with GBA for $149,266 to design these 2 projects and try to move them forward to bid, hopefully by December or the first next year. And the reason these work so well, as you all well know, we're about 80% full depth reconstruction throughout the town on our streets, and we're trying to do the storm with that. So some of these lingering issues can hang out there for 15 years just with the dollar amount it takes to do that kind of work. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yep.
Thank you, Brent. I wanted to ask you about the Apollo Gardens project specifically. So is this because at one point I know we've talked about there's just kind of like a comprehensive stormwater issue up there. Is this project addressing that, or is this more of the concern with the resident's backyard below in the cul-de-sac?
I would say it's addressing probably 50% of the issues up there, but that is one of the specific issues it's addressing. Okay. Trying to add some retention, but we've got some stormwater that's running between people's houses going down to 49th Street as well. It's failing, and there's just nowhere for it to go. Right now, Apollo has basically no stormwater. It's just the back of, what is that? What's the next townhomes behind it?
4,900.
4,900. That's basically where everything drains to that sump and goes down towards Fox Ridge. So, I mean, this is a step in the right direction to help out probably half those residents. And I think the majority of some of those other concerns are going to have to get addressed when we redo the streets in there, just for the tight configurations with the sidewalks and the roads, because it's going to be a major overhaul.
That's good. So one question I had on that was, I know when we talked about this, the project ranking, there was a piece that talked about how there might be like an assessment or some sort of contribution from that area too at one point. Is that still the thinking, or?
So I couldn't tell you for sure right now. The way I understand it, these are city funded projects. I would say the biggest piece of that is we don't have drainage easements and stuff through some of these backyards. So we will be asking for that stuff to be donated to complete this work. Because if we have to buy those kind of easements and right away, that's tremendously going to affect if these projects can get completed.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess when we get a little bit closer down the pipeline, assuming this goes through, will we be reaching out to the Apollo leadership and kind of talking to that HOA about what that would look like?
Yep. And GBA will be on board with that for doing the title work and finding out what kind of drainage easements and stuff we'll need to maintain the infrastructure that we install.
Okay, thanks.
Mary, can I clarify one thing? Brent, that was a response to this piece of the Apollo project, not any future project that there might be to address other lack of stormwater on that site, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in since there was one of these projects this year happening in my neighborhood, and boy, that was a well-run project. They were quick, efficient. It was in and out. I know we've got plenty of happy homeowners over there for that. They have been having some struggles for quite a while. So glad to see some of these projects get going, and I know it's something that's been causing small areas of neighborhoods, but they're small projects, quite a bit of pain, and they got addressed efficiently and quickly and without a lot of disturbance to the residents. So that was great to see.
I appreciate that, and I'll pass that on to the contractor as well. They always like hearing stuff when it comes back to them. So thank you.
Any other comments?
I think stormwater issues are probably one of the least sexy things that we do as a city, but it's, especially in Mission, is one of the most important things that we do, not only for our residents, but just the overall topography of our area. So I appreciate that you all have taken the time to make the list, assess the list, and then go back and kind of rearrange it and make sure that you're doing it the most efficiently, money-wise and work-wise as possible. So thank you for doing that.
And I can also say the residents really appreciate it because you can actually give them an answer. Because prior to 2003, it was, we're going to get to it with a street project or something like that. And you could be telling them that's going to be 15 years down the road. So they appreciate having some sort of timeline of, you know, they realize there's dollars associated with how big the project is, but they like knowing they're on the list and where they're ranked.
And I think Kim had,
Kim Donaway, Mission resident. I think I've done this before, but truly, I really want to acknowledge the Public Works Department. They have really shifted in the last 3 years. They have made Mission much better. They've been extremely responsive to anything that's part of their area, extremely friendly, and they go over things if something can happen or can't, but I don't think in the past, I know a lot of residents were really beating up on Public Works because nothing was ever getting done, or, you know, so I just want to congratulate them and for the outstanding work that they do, and y'all listening to the needs in the community, because we need that for the infrastructure and to have people wanting to be here. So thank you.
Right. Any other committee comments? Otherwise, I'll take a recommendation.
Consent agenda.
Great. Thank you. All right. That concludes our action items. We have no discussion items this evening, but before we adjourn, Ms. Smith, are there any department updates for the community development?
I would ask either Parks, Public Works, or Community Development if they have any updates they want to share this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to remind you all that the Powell Community Center is closing August 19th through the 31st for some deep cleaning of each room, walking track, bathroom renovations, cardio equipment replacement, and the much needed drywall patching and repairs after a summer camp filled with youth. An update on our tree drive. We set a goal of 50 trees planted in Mission for the year 2024. Residents have reached out to me and shared that we've gotten at least 26 to this point. So that's wonderful to hear. And I'm sure there's still people that have planted and just haven't reached out to me yet. And an update on Mohawk Park project. 90% of the trail and walks have been poured, which is wonderful. The playground area is prepped, and sport court pad has been poured and is ready for striping. Seed blankets have been laid on that western portion, and you've seen some trees being installed today. They'll continue that installation throughout the rest of the week. So, thanks.
Ben.
So just a quick update on the newest project in our city. You may have noticed that Roe Avenue is closed between 59th and Johnson Drive. We had advance notification put up, so we had message boards out there. The street is fully closed through probably Friday or Saturday, and will be open for the start of school on Monday. There have been a couple concerns with a traffic signal at Roeland Drive, 60th, and Shawnee Mission Parkway because people are being diverted through the detour. And so Operation Greenlight monitors that traffic signal up there. And so they're expanding the time given to the north-south traffic at that intersection while this closure is going on. So the road will reopen to traffic. There will be a lane drop. So there will only be one lane of traffic each way, but traffic will still flow. So if you have any questions or concerns or you hear anything, just reach out to us. And 55th Street still going pretty strong. So they're making headway. Brent and I drove out there last week and felt like we were off-roading, but it'll be a nice smooth surface here shortly. So just let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything? That is all.
Fortunately, Councilmember Kring is not here tonight, but her favorite restaurant in town is no more. So Popeyes has been demolished. As of this week, the site is clean and they will soon begin construction on a new restaurant. So probably not before the holidays, unfortunately, but I would imagine sometime this winter or spring, there'll be a new restaurant available for us to enjoy. And then the other demolition that's occurring is the corner of 58th and Null. So there's 4 buildings there, the old Sunflower Medical Center, and a couple of homes are all owned by Script Pro for their operations. The contractor has finally been able to make all the utility disconnects, and they're starting the demolition this week. So that project is off and running. So that's our update.
Thank you. And I would say that thanks to a Herculean effort by Mr. Morton last week, we were finally able to get that contractor at 58th and Null over the last utility hurdle so they could actually pull their permit. So thank you, Brent. I know they were very appreciative of that.
Alrighty. And with that, it is now 8:18 p.m. and with no further discussion, that concludes the meeting of the Community Development Committee. Again, this video will be made public on our website at missionks.org. Thank you.
All right, let's do it. It is now 8:18 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee to order. While this meeting is being held in person, we are also offering the option for the public to participate through Zoom if preferred. Instructions on how to attend virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionchaos.org. The public is also invited to participate in the meeting. If you are participating through Zoom, please either add your comment in the chat feature and it will be read out loud, or note that you would like to speak and we will call on you shortly to make your comment verbally. Please remember your comments or questions are visible to everyone in the meeting. If you are part of our in-person group tonight, please raise your hand but stay seated and we will call on you to go to the lectern to make your comment. When you make your comment, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Also be conscientious of others trying to speak and speak slowly and clearly. This meeting will be recorded and posted on the city's website at missionchaos.org. Please contact the administration offices at 913-676-8350 with any questions or concerns. Ms. Folks, please call the roll.
Haden, Chomphosy.
Here.
Boltinghouse.
There.
There. Loudon.
Here.
Ryherd.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Josie.
Here.
Carpenter Davis. Here.
First up, we have a revised agenda for this evening. We're just stepped out, but can anyone else share the proposed agenda changes with us? Robin.
We have 2 revisions to tonight's F&A agenda. The first one is, if you look at the end of your agenda, we have added event number 8, which is a CFD2 special event permit, which I will explain later. And then item number 4 has been removed from the agenda. Those are our 2 changes.
Is there a motion to approve the revised agenda?
Mr. Chairperson, I move the committee approve the August 7th, 2024 Finance and Administration Committee revised agenda as printed.
Second.
Robin, please call the roll.
Haden, Chomphosy.
Here.
Sorry.
Sorry. I agree. I was like, why are we doing it again?
We're glad you're here and we take your vote.
Aye.
Boltinghouse.
Aye.
Loudon.
Aye.
Ryherd.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Josie.
Aye.
Carpenter Davis.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll now proceed with the agenda as revised. Our first item of business is public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment now? Seeing none, we'll move on. We do not have any public presentations this evening, therefore we will move into our action items. Our first action item this evening is the acceptance of the meeting minutes from Robin Folks.
you. Draft minutes of the July 10th Finance and Administration Committee meeting are included for review and acceptance in your packet this evening.
Any comment or discussion on the meetings? Minutes? Recommendation?
Consent.
Yep.
Our second action item tonight is for consideration of the 2024 revised and 2025 recommended budgets from Laura Smith.
Yes, thank you. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time. We've been sitting through budget meetings and discussions since May, actually since March. And so what you see and what was included in your packet is really the compilation of all of the work that we've done over the last several months and the information that will proceed to the public hearing that is required as a part of our budget adoption process. And that public hearing has been scheduled for your August 21st City Council meeting. Really just, I would hit a couple of the highlights. There are 3 separate resolutions that were included in here that you will consider in adopting the budget. Those have to do with, it's a combined budget hearing, levying a property tax rate that exceeds revenue neutral for the City of Mission's budget and both of the Rock Creek Drainage District's budgets. Those mill levies are recommended to be held constant at the 2024 rate, so no increases or decreases in those. Really, we have, as you know, as we've gone through the process, the mill levy increase that the council considered and approved for the 2024 budget has helped to start to sort of right our ship a little bit in some key areas. We still have work to do, but I think there are a number of, we've funded the highest priority sort of supplemental projects that were requested through this budget process. But there's still a lot of belt tightening that is occurring in the proposed and recommended 2025 budget. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but we will give kind of a more detailed presentation similar to the community dialogue on the budget that we had at our ahead of our July City Council meeting at the council meeting on the 21st.
Thank you, Laura. Are there any questions or comments from the public or from the committee? You had a recommendation then?
Regular, yep. Okay.
Regular, okay. Our third action item tonight is for consideration of a budget resolution and adoption of the 2024 revised and 2025 proposed budgets, also from Laura Smith.
Thank you. So this may be somewhat redundant, but for really, I would say almost the last 20 years, we have adopted a budget resolution that just tries to capture in one document sort of the underlying policies, tax fee structure decisions that are incorporated in the particular budget for that given fiscal year. We felt like that has helped communicate to the public. We've also found it's helpful in communicating to the county when we submit our final budget to make sure that they're clear on our intentions with respect to many of those things. So you, again, have 3 separate resolutions, and through this resolution, this is where you would actually formally adopt the budget, and then for the city and for the 2 drainage districts.
Yep. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Any from the committee? Yes.
I just want, this probably should be on the last item, which is when you mentioned the supplemental request, but I did just want to highlight for anyone who hasn't been following the full process, several of those projects, even though we've labeled them supplemental, were actually like critical life safety.
Fire panel replacement, yes, correct, at City Hall. Some air quality adjustments, things like that. Yes, thank you, Mayor, for that clarification.
There are no other comments or questions. Can I get a recommendation?
To the regular agenda.
Regular agenda. Next up, we have an item related to phase 2 of the Lanes at Mission Bowl and the pending tax increment financing request, also from Laura Smith.
Yes, and I would just comment, we did remove item number 4, the capital improvement budget resolution, and that is not something that is legally required as we adopt the budget. It's again, something that we've done historically to just sort of capture that. There are still a lot of moving parts and pieces of that over the 5 years. So we're seeing reductions in funding requests from CARS. And so we will be bringing that back to you all in September, but the appropriate budget amounts for 2025 are already captured in the budget that would be adopted on the 21st. With respect to the Lanes at Mission Bowl Phase 2, this evening, you may recall that we, in July, passed a resolution that called a public hearing to consider the TIF redevelopment project plan for this project, as well as a split of that TIF district for your August 21st meeting. There's some statutory timelines that need to be met in terms of when the public hearing must be held following passage of the resolution. There's still a lot of issues sort of at play that we're working through with the developer. So we will be opening the public hearing, making some presentations on the 21st, and then continuing that public hearing until the September meeting. We will not be asking you to make that determination at the August 21st meeting because you don't have the materials in hand. This evening, we thought it might be beneficial, and Mr. Kevin Wempe with Gilmore and Bell, the city's bond counsel, I think I spied him on the back row, is here. We've actually are going to kind of walk through quickly a short presentation that we've done in the past about just the TIF process, the steps in the TIF process, because I know there are several of you who have never had the opportunity to go through this from start to finish. Then the other component pieces. So the TIF redevelopment project plan, which was included in your packet, was found in conformance with the comprehensive plan by the Planning Commission at their June meeting. And so the remaining pieces that you would have would be the financial analysis of the project from Mr. Kimmel at Ellers, a draft of the development agreement, the draft ordinance that you would consider. And then in this case, there's also a request for the IRBs for sales tax exemption. All of those materials are now ready, and we will send those out to you all probably this Friday or next Monday. So you will have plenty of time in advance of the 21st. Again, we won't be asking you to make a decision on this at the 21st. So those materials are coming. And with that, I might invite Mr. Wempe up to walk us through the presentation. Oh, you moved he snuck up on the front row.
Right. Thanks, Laura. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kevin Wempe with Gilmore and Bell. We represent the city as your bond counsel. So nice to see you all again. As Laura said, just half a dozen slides or so, the quick refresher for a lot of you on TIF 101. So we'll walk through the basics, talk a little bit about the procedure that lies ahead for this project in particular. Who's driving? Okay, Justin. Okay, thanks, Justin. So big overview to kind of capture the concept of TIF is that it's just really a development tool to incentivize a project and to capture the future property tax or sales tax or economic activity revenues that occur at the project site, capture those for a period of time and use them to pay certain eligible project costs to that project. And those revenue streams, again, primarily are property tax increment, so the increase in property tax, and also can be certain sales tax revenues, transient guest tax revenues if there's a hotel and a TGT levied by the city, and some other revenues that can be tossed in as well. And those revenue streams can be set up using TIF and be used to issue bonds. And so bonds are issued for upfront financing, and then those revenue streams are captured to repay the debt service on those bonds, or also pay-as-you-go or pay-go financing, where a developer, in most cases, advances all costs up front using traditional private methods and then is reimbursed over time as those revenues are captured into the TIF fund. So focusing on eligibility for this slide, first of all, with areas, geographically, you can't just use TIF wherever you would like. The statute requires that you have an eligible area, and the three most common eligible areas are listed there. The first two, conservation area and blighted area, rely on conditions at the site. It's probably evident from the definitions, but there's a list in the statute of certain factors that must be found on a site in order to be called blighted or a conservation area. Conservation area in particular relies on, first of all, the age of the buildings. Majority of the buildings within the area have to be 35 years or older. And then also there's a variety of factors and findings that would have to be made to use TIF. A pre-92 enterprise zone is declared by statute based on certain tracts in each city. And it's basically per se eligibility for a TIF district if you're working in an area that was designated as an enterprise zone at that time. As far as eligible costs, think horizontal infrastructure and also site acquisition costs. Vertical improvements are prohibited for being reimbursed, at least private vertical costs. There are some exceptions to that, but think public infrastructure and site acquisition and other horizontal demolition, site prep type things. So, a few key definitions embedded in the statute is, first of all, the base year assessed valuation. And we'll hit it again, but again, the whole concept is that you're incentivizing a project, it increases the assessed valuation, and then we can capture certain of that property tax increment. And so when we say base year assessed value, that's determined at the time the district's created, and then any future growth is what's measured against that base year to determine what the increment is. Tax increment is the next one, and just covered it, but except for the shielded mills under state law, that is the amount of property tax that can be captured into the TIF fund. And there's 29.5 mills that are shielded under current state law. 28 of those are for school district funding, and then 1.5 mills are the state's building levy. All other mills are subject to capture. Last term is just the TIF fund, and that's where by state law the funds go, any captured TIF funds go into that TIF fund and are collected. It can be used to pay the eligible costs we've covered or debt service on bonds that finance those costs. This is just a really rudimentary graph to illustrate the property tax increment. And so the base year collections, again, we just mentioned the base year. That's sort of what we refer to as being held harmless. None of the taxing jurisdictions are, whatever they got under that assessed valuation from the base year, they're held harmless and continues to flow to all taxing jurisdictions. The excluded mills or shielded mills are shown there in the yellow. And then the growth above that is the increment that can be captured to be used to pay TIF costs. At the highest level, TIF's really a two-step process from your perspective. And we've got some more detailed dates behind this slide, but on the short end, it takes 3 or 4 months, and more often, more like half a year to get through a TIF project from beginning to end, because there's so many notices, lapse of time that's built into the statute. It's just a really procedurally intense process. But step one is formation or establishment of the TIF district. Again, that determines the base year. So that freezes the base year against which the future growth is measured to determine increment. Establishes the geographic area where the TIF district exists, and also begins collection of property tax increment at that time. The second step, after all the notices and publications required by state law, is adoption of a TIF plan. And a TIF district can have multiple TIF plans or TIF project areas. And each one of those is limited to a 20-year clock. So when a TIF plan is adopted, you have 20 years to accomplish your project or repay bonds. And at that time, that project area would dissolve. In adoption of the TIF plan, the legal effect is that you can begin spending those funds accruing in the TIF fund to reimburse the developer or pay bond costs. And then the last 2 slides here just illustrate all the milestones along the way to get to step 1 here of forming a TIF district. Again, on the short end, it's a little over a month, usually a couple of months. And then also the school district and county are granted a veto right within 30 days of establishing a TIF district. Those 2 taxing jurisdictions can adopt a resolution and unilaterally terminate a TIF project. And then last slide here, that process listed on the last slide is basically repeated when considering each individual TIF plan for a project area. And the adoption of a TIF plan ordinance does require a 2/3 supermajority vote of the governing body. Just to quickly touch on upcoming procedural steps for the project you'll be considering at this month's meeting. This TIF district was formed years ago. I'm sure you're all aware. And so we're really on the second slide of forming a TIF district with the twist that we're also splitting off into 2 TIF districts, the existing district that's there. That's probably sounds familiar to a lot of you who were here 4 years ago now for the first phase, where similar procedural we did the same thing procedurally. And so the ordinance you'd consider after the public hearings would be to split the TIF district and also adopt a TIF plan for the site of the phase 2 project. With that, that's it for prepared remarks, but happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any public comments first? Yeah, come on up.
Sorry. Kim, Mission resident, who benefits from the TIF? Where's the money go? Who's getting it?
So, so we currently have phase 1. There was a TIF project plan redevelopment agreement that was approved. The developer is reimbursed through the increment for eligible costs, and that can be anywhere from, you know, no portion of the TIF, which you wouldn't have an agreement in that case, up to 100% of the TIF. In the phase 1 agreement, and I will just preview that tentatively in the agreement that you will see shortly, this project is not receiving 100% of that increment over the 20-year period. So it starts at 90% and then steps down 5% by each 5-year period. So there's a portion of TIF revenues that will come to the city over that period of time. And all of that, we'll share that when in the memo from our financial advisor. Those can be used for public TIF eligible costs. And you may recall that on phase 1 and also applies in phase 2, we as a city incurred substantial costs to reconstruct that channel behind the properties. And so there's a portion of those revenues that will come back to us, to the city.
Residents in the city.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
I just.
Yes.
So I would like to see the city and residents actually get a benefit on a financial, something coming back for a change. So thank you very much.
And I will also steal the thunder of this. I think we've referenced it in other conversations tonight, but this is also a project where you're going to see the developer committing 20% of the units as affordable housing and committing to a LEED Silver certification for the building. So both the sustainability and the attainable housing requirements, they do have all of their zoning entitlements currently. So this last incentive piece is kind of the last piece of the puzzle that we'll be bringing forward.
Thank you.
Question? Yes.
Yeah, I just had one more question for Kevin, or really whoever knows the answer. But if there are eligible funds left in the TIF fund when the clock is up, or that aren't, haven't been reimbursed, what happens to those? Or not eligible funds, but increment funds that didn't go to an eligible, reimbursable cost by the end of the 20-year clock?
Sure. So as Laura mentioned, some of the funds are expected to be set aside for the city to utilize for TIF costs. Again, the statute's pretty specific about what you can spend those on, but the city has incurred plenty of eligible costs, I think, in the area. If a project's completed, meaning in this case, the developers reimbursed early, or in the case where you issue bonds, perhaps the bonds redeem early. At that point, the statute instructs to terminate the TIF district, and then those mills are released to all the taxing jurisdictions.
Okay.
So while there's a 20-year maximum, there's a chance it pays off early, and the TIF's dissolved early.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Can clarify one thing on that? And that would occur if the final assessed valuation ends up being higher than projected. Is that what would so the increment is essentially bigger than what was expected, or if for some reason eligible costs change, or that's kind of two scenarios where you'd see that?
Yeah, there's some levers that could move around. The developer does its own projections on what the county is going to value it at, and that's a moving target, like you said. Their construction budget might change. Maybe they have more eligible costs or fewer eligible costs, those types of things. The city's financial advisor screens that on our end as well. But you're right that we do our best to figure out what pencils out, the developer on their end as well. But it's not a perfect science to plan 20 years in advance. So there is a chance it moves one way or the other.
Any other questions? No, thank you. And Laura, did you have more to go through on this, or?
I do not. So again, as I said, those materials, we're wrapping that up, and you should see those and have those so you can start to work through them. So as again, open the public hearing on the 21st, continue it to, I believe it's whatever, September 18th. If we feel like following that public hearing, you want to have a work session specifically on this, we do have the August 28th work session date that has not been assigned to another topic. We have the September committee meeting and then the September meeting. So there are plenty of opportunities. I know it's been important, as it should be, to this council and all of us to make sure that we get you those materials and that the public, you and the public, have plenty of opportunity to review that before we ask you to make any decision on the project.
Great. There are no other comments. Can I get one more?
I just want to make a small comment. Just so that's understood by the public that we don't just give tax incentives willy-nilly. We usually get something fairly substantial in return from the deal. And not only do we, sometimes it's just the fact that we're able to take a piece of land that would only get a certain amount of sales tax for the next 20 years if someone didn't do something with it. And we're still able to increase the amount of sales tax to a certain extent that we will be receiving, or property tax, not sales tax, property tax that we will be receiving on there. We also, especially with these new apartments, we're bringing in more people who are going to be shopping here and generating more sales tax. That's where the sales tax was coming in. So there's, and then with the affordable housing, sometimes we can move them a little bit further down the line for green building. So the city always benefits in some way or another. And it's not like we're taking tax dollars out of citizens' pockets. We're just earning less than we would have if they had fully funded. So I just want to make sure that people understand that. And we really do take this process very seriously and make sure that you know, we're not putting ourselves in a bad situation financially.
I would just, and I think Mr. Wimpy shared sort of the statutory reasons why something could be put into a TIF district. This was a city-initiated TIF district back in 2006, I think. Is that our base year? 5 or 6, a long time ago. And that was done on the basis of the FEMA floodplain map revisions in the early 2000s that put most of this area along the creek channel into a 100-year floodplain, which obviously impacts the long-term development opportunities. And so it was a very large TIF district, which is also why you see us partitioning it off as specific projects come forward. But that was very, I think, limited cases do you see a city initiate that TIF, but that's how this underlying TIF district was formed. So it's been through that process. County and school district did not veto it at that time. And so we're on to the project plan phase.
If I can just sort of double underline, we have a stormwater channel on a major floodplain, like ripping right through the middle of our core business district. So I do empathize with the fact that it's difficult to develop on those parcels. Some public partnership is almost certainly appropriate, and it being a case-by-case basis, it's always going to come down to the details, but it's always worth remembering, you know, we want people spending money, moving around, walking around, shopping, you know, spreading tax dollars and supporting our businesses. And that's extra tough for a developer to help us with to the extent that they are interested in doing that when they've got to deal with, floodplain and, who knows what other old abandoned infrastructure that we, may or may not know about in advance and so on. So.
Are there any additional comments or questions? No? Can I get a recommendation on this? Regular.
This
We're gonna
this
have
will
to do it on
only
the regular
be,
agenda.
this will show up as a public hearing item on your agenda, and then there will be no associated action.
Okay.
Well, continuation of the public hearing would be the only action item.
Great. Our 6th action item tonight is for consideration of updates to the Mission Municipal Code for court fees and charges from Justin Carroll.
Thank you. So with this one, we saw that the state of Kansas increased one of the required court fees, which is for the Law Enforcement Training Center Fund. So this is a required fee that all jurisdictions in the state pay. And when we were reviewing that to figure out what we need to do to accommodate that increase in that fund, we actually saw that we haven't touched the court fees ordinance since 2016. So these proposed changes account for that new increase in the state of Kansas for that fund and everything, and just to square everything to make it current. Those proposed dollar amount changes are what are before you, and then that will essentially hold the city harmless. So even with that increase in the portion that goes to the state, we're increasing the overall amount, and so that we're still going to collect the same amount of revenue.
Any questions from the public or committee? Nope. Get a recommendation on this one.
I'd like to take it to consent. Okay.
Consent it is. Our next action item tonight is for consideration of a public nudity ordinance from Chief Dan Madden.
Sound excited, yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening.
For everyone who stayed tuned in.
Going off the rails.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. Oh, yeah. Oh, now I don't know how to take that. So we have the need to institute a public nudity ordinance, often referred to by other names in different jurisdictions. Sometimes, well, probably the most common term you'd find is like indecent exposure, things like that. Currently, we don't have anything on our books that would prohibit somebody from being nude in public, and all of our cases before have kind of relied on the lewd and lascivious activity law that requires some sort of sexual gratification for doing so, and so this would give us some enforcement mechanism through municipal court if somebody was found to be nude in public under the conditions of the ordinance as written.
Do we have questions from the public? No. Questions from the committee?
Brian, I had a couple of things for Chief. The first was, I know that the definition of, and sorry, my PDF keeps crashing, so I don't have it actually pulled up in front of me, but that this would include anything from public view, which could include like someone's, oh, thanks, Leah, someone's backyard, if it's viewable to a neighbor, things like that. And so I just had some concern that there was maybe a little bit of overreach, you know, if someone has a 6-foot privacy fence and is in their backyard. Similar concerns about, you know, up to 30 days in jail. What if it's a 18-year-old mooning a friend on Johnson Drive? So I did have perhaps some concerns about the backyard scenario. If we could maybe take a look at that, or if you have thoughts on that piece. And then also, is a Class C misdemeanor the lowest possible offense that we have, or, you know, could it only be jail time if it's a multiple time offender? Or
right.
I just wanted to kind of hear from you on those two pieces.
Yeah, the punishment is Class C misdemeanor, which that's the standard punishment for any Class C misdemeanor. And they'll all include any time you hear a sentence or a potential punishment for a crime, it always has to include the very top tier of any maximums. So the jail time would be one of those situations where it would be something that would be repeat offenders that would that would be looking at anything like that through the municipal court.
So that would be at the judge's discretion, just like with any other Class C misdemeanor. It's
Yeah.
a range starting at,
Right.
no
There's
jail
no
time and $1 to
right
30 days jail time and
Right.
$500.
Yeah, completely at the judge's discretion. And I believe our municipal court is very accommodating, tries to not put people in jail unless that is the absolute necessary thing or statutory thing. So in the public place, and it does, I understand the concerns about a privacy fence, and that's not the spirit of why we're bringing this forward. Obviously there could be situations where, terrain or elevation would lead even a privacy fenced area would to still be visible. But that's not the spirit of it. The spirit of it is more of the like knowingly and willingly committing, the act of public nudity, and not the, attempt to be in a private place that just happens to not be as private as you may have thought.
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe in between now and the council meeting, if there's any language we could look at maybe around that piece, just so there isn't maybe that overreach or encouraging neighbors to kind of, peek on each other. You don't want to create a worse situation.
Right. Yeah, I will talk with the attorneys and see if we can come up with any language that might make that a little less reaching.
Any additional comments or questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Yes, can I get a recommendation on that, please?
I would say this, with the potential amendment, it needs to go on the regular agenda.
Let's see. Our final action item tonight is for consideration of a special event permit for street solicitation from Consolidated Fire District Number 2 from Robin Folks.
Yes, thank you. As some of you know, annually over the Labor Day holiday weekend, Consolidated Fire District Number 2 holds their Boot Block, which is a fundraiser for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, which they are a partnership with. So they have submitted their dates and times for this year's fundraiser. They hope to solicit funds at the intersection of Johnson Drive and Broadmoor from August 30th through September 2nd. August 30th is a Friday, and their proposed times are 3 to 6 p.m. August 31st, which is a Saturday, through September 2nd, which is Monday, 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. They have submitted their event permit, and both Chief Madden and our Public Works Department have reviewed and signed off on that permit application as being sufficient, and they have submitted the required insurance coverage as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from the public or the committee? Nope. Can I get a recommendation on this one, please? Consent.
Thank you.
That wraps up our action items. We do not have any discussion items this evening. Ms. Smith, are there any department updates for the committee?
I would just like to offer kudos to the police department for a very successful national night out. If you had the opportunity to stop by, they had to make a run mid-event for more hot dogs.
Here. My daughter's still talking about it.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So that was great. And I think half the department is taking credit for the weather, so they'll have to sort of arm wrestle over that. But thank you, Chief, and to all the folks that were there. It was a lot of fun to just see the community out and interacting. So that's all I have.
If nothing else, it is now 8:55 p.m. and with no further discussion, that concludes the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee. This video will be made public on our website at missionks.org. Thank you.